Hello, and welcome to a podcast from the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. And DeSantis here with my co-host, Caroline Godin, for our 12 Ways to Heal After a Crisis. Welcome back, Caroline.
Great to be here as always.
Yes, great to be here. Now, the topic for this podcast on this episode are frequenting the sacraments during a time of crisis. So, namely, that would be going to mass and also going to confession. And for those who aren't Catholic and who want to become Catholic or learn more, that would actually be getting baptized and then receiving the other sacraments of the faith. And so, Caroline, first, as I always do it on every podcast, tell us a bit about you and the work that you do and your family.
Sure. So I'm a mom of three. My husband was a first responder for a lot of years. He was a firefighter and then an EMT and a 911 dispatcher. And so that work that he did led me into a company called First Responder Coaching. We do life coaching for first responders and their families. And we address a lot of the mental health issues that go unnoticed or unreported. And so that's a lot of the work that we do there. I'm also a writer for Catholic 365, Epic Pew, and Catholic Mom. And I'm also a catechist.
Yes, you're doing amazing work. Busy lady. So we really appreciate the fact that she takes the time to co-host this podcast with me. And this podcast is all about you. As I've said so many times on previous podcasts, that the foundation's work is all about ministry to individuals and families in crisis. And that's the name of this podcast is 12 Ways to Heal After a Crisis or During a Crisis.
Yeah.
And both Caroline and I have both experienced all kinds of things in our lives, just like I think most people that are watching this show. And so, why don't I start with you, Caroline? I mean, what is your take on staying close to the sacraments of our faith when you're going through some kind of trial? Like, in what ways has that helped you when you've gone through stuff?
Well, one thing about the Catholic Church is it is constant, and everything in the world changes. People change, culture changes, but God doesn't change. God is constant. And so if we keep bringing ourselves back to that constant, especially at a time of crisis, we have that foundation. And it's like being able to come home and find that comfort in being in a familiar place, which is always supportive and loving and able to fill you with grace. And so coming to the sacraments is that. It's that feeling. I was going to say it's like that, but it isn't like that. It is that. So that's how I feel, and that's why I've always stayed connected, and it's helped me through my difficulties.
Yeah, it's so important. And for me too. I mean, I'm a married person, been married for 35 years. I have a couple of daughters, even a grandchild now. And with the ups and downs of life, there are always those either weeks, months, or even years that are times of real challenge. You can go through in your life, where it's even certain amount of years that have been challenging and also very stressful for you and your family. So I just want to acknowledge that to you who are watching us right now and thinking, I'm in the middle of something that's very difficult for both me and my family. And during this whole series, we're talking about 12 ways. So every single podcast, we're talking about something that you can do to get through that. Some of those things are a little bit more, basic, meaning like maybe you need to get therapy. Maybe you need to see a counselor. Maybe you need to find out what the resources are for you in your community. But this one is really spiritual, pastoral and spiritual, because those sacraments are really gifts of our faith. As Caroline said, it helps to give us that grace to continue on the journey when we're going through real tough times. Now, one of those sacraments is reconciliation, going to the sacrament of confession, especially if you're going through something and maybe you've fallen away. Maybe you started missing mass for some reason, or maybe you made a conscious decision that, I don't want to go to church anymore because of what's happening to me in my life right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I don't know, Caroline, did you have any words of wisdom on confession? Because I think that when I've been through challenging times, making that regular appointment in my mind, like say, I'm going to go every 2 weeks or every month or every however often I was going to do it, has made such an impact on my faith.
The feeling of coming out of confession, it's like you've just washed your hands and you got the grit off, or you took a shower and you feel better, and you've done that to your soul, and it just feels really good. You come out and the weight is lifted. So no matter what it is that you need to say, that you need to confess, get it out, because it's a moment of healing and cleansing. And if you're not sure, um, there's all kinds of resources. You can search and examine of conscience, and go through all of the steps and say, okay, when have I done this? Have I always been loving? Have I always honored God? Have I been kind? And all those things, it takes you through specific things. There are examines you can look at that are specific for women, for men, for children, for teens, for adults, moms, dads, you name it. Even by profession, there's some out there. So you can do that. And if you're really unsure, call a priest. I know St. Raymond has spiritual guidance, and you can call and talk to someone there. But you can call your local priest and you can have a conversation with him. And you could say, look, I think I need to make a confession, but I want to have a spiritual talk first. And it's just so I can make sure that I say everything that I need to say. And they'll appreciate that, because it's a booked appointment, and you're not just going to step into the confessional and kind of like bumble around and not know what to say. And, maybe there's a lot of people waiting. So they will appreciate that, but they're going to make time for you. They want to.
Thank you. Well, we really appreciate that because, we're not a business. We don't get anything really for doing this. We are a nonprofit. I mean, everything that we do is off of like donations from good people like you who are watching. So when you make that appointment, you just go to our website and we have a page called uh, priestly consultation or pastoral consult. And you just make a request to us. And it can be either a phone call or like a Google Meet, something like a Zoom call, and you can meet with one of our priests. Now, remember, because we get this all the time in the foundation, that you have to do confession in person. Sometimes people will reach out and say, can I do a Zoom call? But you do have to do that in person. It is just part of the doctrines. It's part of the teachings of the church that it has to be in person. So now I pulled up this article. It's on Corpus Christi phx.org, just a website that I found for a good Catholic church. And they talk about reconciliation. And the person who wrote this article said that reconciliation is one of the sacraments in which we may participate in the actual rite as often as we would like. And it is the immediate remedy available to us when we do sin. And then he goes on to say that God is infinitely merciful and loving and wants us to have plentiful opportunities to restore our relationship with him. If we are truly sorry for our sins, we can go to the sacrament of reconciliation and offer God our sorrow for having offended him, and he will forgive us and wipe our slate clean. Like, what's better than that, right? What is better than that when you're going through something? Now, when you go through a crisis, maybe you feel that you're being sinned against. And when you're being sinned against, maybe it was something to do with a relationship, a divorce, a separation, a job loss, and you feel like someone hurt you and not maybe the other way around. But remember that going to confession is always just about our part of it, not what other people do to us. So you can still receive that grace, even if it's something that you feel that it was out of your control, right? It was out of your control. And there's always something that we can find when we go to confession, even if we feel like, this terrible person did something to me and now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe our sin could be something like even unforgiveness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can always learn something when we really examine our consciences. I don't think, what do you think about that, Caroline?
Absolutely. Even if you're stuck in anger, you can confess that. and you might receive some guidance from that. And you know, when we're dealing with anything, what do we want to do? We want to go talk about it, or we have this desire to talk about it, even if you're not the kind of person that wants to express your feelings. And that's, you know, in the things that I do, that's a lot of the people I work with. But if you're not the type of person that wants to express your feelings, that's okay. You can't help that desire to get something off your chest when it's really bothering you. Go to confession. And, you know, you don't have to talk about the gossip end of it, the nitty gritty of it. You just have to talk about what's happening in you, what's happening inside of you. So are you feeling anger? Are you having a hard time forgiving a person? Did you say something in haste or do something in haste? And those are the things that you express. And when you're in confession, you're not there to talk about someone else's sins. As righteous as that may feel to you, that's not what you're there for. You're there to take care of you, and God will take care of the other person.
Oh, so well said. So well said. And especially to you, our audience, who maybe you have been wronged in some way, and maybe you're the one who caused pain. You know, it's always a two-way street, I think. Anytime there's a family adversity or a job loss of a lot, whatever that is. I mean, there's always a two-way street in our relationships with other people, right? It's that horizontal relationship. The vertical relationship is our relationship with God, which forms the cross, right? It's always it always goes both ways. So when you're going to confession, you are reconciling your relationship with God, but you're in a lot of ways you're reconciling your relationship with other people too. Because remember, we're all part of that universal church, the communion of saints. Our lives all affect one another in every way, don't they? No matter where we are, we make an effect on other people. Now, one of those other sacraments, and of course, we could talk about all of the sacraments, but we do probably have to limit it to mostly talking about confession and receiving the Eucharist, right? Is receiving the Eucharist really, I mean, the source and summit of our faith, the greatest gift of our faith, going to Mass and receiving Jesus' body, blood, soul, and divinity. When you're going through a challenge sometimes, and I've heard this more than once from people that we communicate with through the foundation, is that people fall away from going to Sunday Mass. And that couldn't be, I mean, I would say that's probably the biggest mistake, because we don't want to lose our relationship with God, especially when we're going through something. And some people might say, well, I just don't have time. Well, thank God in the Catholic Church, we have a lot of options, right? For the most part, we can go Saturday, we can go super early on Sunday. I know in my area, we can go like even on Sunday evenings. We even have one parish, which is one of our Mercedarian parishes, that has like an 8 p.m. on a Sunday evening. So talk about that, Caroline. I mean, for both of us, we've been through stuff. Don't you think that continuing to be consistent about going to Mass is just so important?
When we prioritize Mass, and again, it goes back to the sacraments being our foundation of our faith, our anchor in our faith. When we prioritize Mass, we really help to solidify that relationship with God. We're receiving graces every time. We're reaffirming our faith, and we're reaffirming our identities as the people of God. And through all of that, and especially if you have children, you're bringing them to Mass every Sunday or Saturday evening or Sunday evening. And as you do that week after week, you are showing them, not just telling them, showing them and living out that faith, so that even if they fall away for a little while, they are much more likely to come back to that. And you just have to hang on to that. We have such busy schedules. We've got, between martial arts and soccer and hockey, and my husband works as an overnight nurse. There's just a lot going on. So sometimes it can be difficult to find a Mass time that fits for us. But if we have to split up and do 2 different Masses, that's what we'll do. We will make a priority to make time for God, because we wouldn't be here without him. He holds us together, and that's important to us. And so we make time to do that. It's only an hour. We should have a relationship with God all throughout the week. But if you can just make that weekly mass attendance a priority, there is a way you can make it happen.
Absolutely. And I think for all of us, our faith journey sometimes is like a roller coaster, right? When you really look back at your life, and I know when I look back at my life, I see that there were times that I was struggling, and there could have been a temptation on some weeks where I was like, you know what, I'm tired or something. But at the end of the day, I think once we have a deeper conversion to our faith, and it happens to a lot of us, right? We realize that even if there's something terrible going on in your life, that you wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I have to go to mass, and I want to go to mass. It's not just about the obligation, right? Yes, it is an obligation. It is a sin to miss it. But then you realize that, this is really my home, and this is where I want to be. And even if I'm going through something, you go and you pray. Prayer is the medicine of our souls, isn't it? And it's our relationship with God. It's the two-way street of listening and also of talking to God. And when you go to mass, you have a better opportunity with Jesus Christ inside you, right? Inside your body, mind, and spirit, for you
Mm-hmm.
to commune with him, for you to have a relationship with him. And so it's just so important. And I think in a discussion having to do with frequenting the sacraments, we can also talk about our friends who might be watching, that maybe you were baptized and received some of your sacraments, but not all of them. And we want to make that invitation to you today, that if just say, I mean, I know I even have some relatives or people that I know that they could have been baptized, but then they never received penance or the Eucharist or confirmation. And so that's an invitation. When I say frequenting the sacraments, that's not just for people who are completely and fully integrated into the church. I want to invite you who are watching, who have that
Mm-hmm.
desire to be Catholic and to complete the sacraments of your faith. Caroline, I didn't know if you had any words of wisdom on that, because I think we both probably know people that didn't completely finish, right?
Yep, I know people that didn't completely finish. I know people that just kind of never got their kids baptized, or they got their kids baptized, but they never got any further first communion or anything like that. The sacraments are always available. There's no point in a human's life where we say, well, you missed the boat, too bad, you don't get it now. Yeah, I mean, that's not a thing. You can go through RCIA, or now it's called OCIA. You can go through that at any time. Anybody can receive the anointing of the sick, also known as last rites. As a priest has said many times, don't wait until the last moment. Anybody can receive anointing of the sick. You don't have to wait till their dying breath. Um, and there's no need to wait for any of them. Speak to a priest, reach out to your local parish, find out what you need to do to complete those sacraments. We celebrated last Easter. A friend of ours came fully into the Catholic Church, and he was Protestant. He was raised Protestant, and his wife was Catholic. And he went through the program, and he finished and was brought into the Catholic Church fully this past Easter. So that was a wonderful, beautiful thing. And he learned so much through that whole process. And those who go through that, even their Catholic family members learn so much, because you're recatechizing everybody. You're kind of relearning everything, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. And my husband and I go to the Easter Vigil every year at our church, which is the evening before Easter, usually around 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. And it's always a joy to see those people who are coming into the church. And remember, as I said at the beginning of this little piece here, that some of them are people who were baptized, but they just never had gotten their other sacraments. They never got reconciliation. They never got the Eucharist. They never got confirmed. And so we want to warmly invite all of you who are watching this podcast. If you've never been baptized or don't, basically you've just been living a secular life all your life, but now you're saying, you know what? Yeah, I want to do this. I would encourage you to reach out to your local Catholic church. Usually, being Catholic, we go to the closest one, but you don't have to do that either. You can go to a neighboring parish. Sometimes people just like this other church better or something, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Or you
You
might have
can
family in a different one, or
Right,
yeah.
exactly. Or you can even do sometimes people like to go through their sacraments even at the local cathedral. Like we have our basilica in Philadelphia. Sometimes people would choose it for their sacraments. Maybe they want to do that. So, however you want to do it, but we definitely want to make sure that you're invited. And also, for you who are watching and you have kids or relatives that maybe you didn't baptize your little ones or put them through all of their sacraments, but it's not too late for that either. It's never too late. You can make that phone call and invite them. And maybe your kids are older. Maybe they're in their 20s or 30s. And now you're looking back and saying, oh, I should have done that. Well, maybe they're not under your roof anymore, but that doesn't mean that you can't suggest it, right? In
Mhm.
a kind way, not in a sort of a bossy way manner of telling them what to do, but inviting them, being invitational to coming back, getting baptized, and going through the sacraments. So that's what we mean really by like frequenting the sacraments. We mean penance and confession, going to mass and receiving the Eucharist. And if you haven't completed those sacraments, then please go ahead and do it. Of course, marriage is also a sacrament, holy orders, and they're not ones that they're optional ones, right? So it's not like if you haven't got married and you're thinking, well, I didn't complete that one yet, but it's whenever that happens, it happens, right? So Caroline, did you have any other words of wisdom? Because I don't know, I'm trying to think of every little area in terms of frequenting those sacraments, but of course, maybe I missed something.
Well, I mean, there's another way that you can kind of sacrament adjacent, I guess. But if you're able to get to Eucharistic adoration,
Mm,
it it's not technically a sacrament because you're not receiving the Eucharist, but you are present
you're
with the
present.
true presence, and you are in the presence of Jesus in the flesh when you are with the Eucharist in Eucharistic adoration.
It's
So,
an extension. It's not a sacrament because anybody can go into that church and pray, even if they're not Catholic or religious. So it
yep,
wouldn't be, and you don't need a priest or anyone to administer that.
correct.
Um, so it wouldn't be a sacrament, but it's an extension of of receiving the Eucharist. So you can certainly
Yes.
do that and pray. Maybe that's a beginning thing that you can do if you're contemplating any of these things, right? Start by going to Eucharistic adoration, right?
Be present in front of Jesus. Talk to him about it. Be
Mm-hmm.
right there face to face with him and have that conversation, and then see where that leads you. See where that pulls you. You never know.
Oh, I love that. That's so great. And also you probably know somebody. Is it your mother, your father, a neighbor? Is it a teacher? You know somebody in your life. If you're watching this podcast, obviously the Catholic Church means something to you, even if you haven't finished your sacraments. A mentor, someone that you admire in some way, whoever that is. That's the person you want to reach out to ask questions about the faith, right? You want to ask that person. And if you don't know anybody, I invite you to reach out to us. Just go to our website, make that free pastoral appointment with us on our website by filling out the form. We're happy to help. So I think we've touched on a lot during this one. And I'm excited for the other ones in this series. We're not finished yet. We have 12 podcasts. It's a lot of podcasts. Go back if you can on our Philly Nonnatus YouTube channel, subscribe, and also watch all those other ones because we have great topics that we've covered on how to heal before, during, and after a crisis, right? So, any final words from you, Caroline?
Just keep yourself in prayer. Keep yourself as exposed to the Lord as you can. Keep going back to him in the sacraments, in adoration, in prayer, in whatever way you can. The more you just immerse yourself in God, the more he will be present in your life.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Thank you so much, Caroline. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you on our next episode. To all of you, have a great month. Remember that we premiere on the last Thursday of every month on the Philly Nonnatus YouTube channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can watch it anytime. And also on our St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation Facebook page. Have a great month, and we'll see you next time. God bless.
See you.